What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Sports Talk Buffalo. Thank you for making me part of your week. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not going to be a very long video as I didn't have the quality time that I usually do in order to put some of these videos together. However, I did want to put out a video for you guys about the NHL Expansion Draft and potential trade of Rasmus Ristolainen. Now, we're going to start with the NHL Expansion Draft here, as this is the first time that ESPN is getting back into the market of the NHL. Now, NBC Sports has had the NHL contract for something like nearly a decade or more, I believe, and that was their number one thing that they had on their station was the NHL, and the NHL moved away from ESPN because it was like the number 5 or 6 or what have you on their station. And watching this expansion draft show that ESPN put on, I just didn't really like the presentation of it. I didn't really like it at all. It looked kind of, I don't want to say substandard because it wasn't substandard, but I was just not really a big fan of how they presented it on ESPN. And not only that, but they didn't even present it on ESPN. They put it on ESPN2. Now, that's not a huge deal. It's not like it was on online only. However, it was only on ESPN2, which means it got beat out by something else on the main station of ESPN. And again, I just didn't like the style. I went back and I watched the Vegas Golden Knights expansion draft, and I like that just so much more than how the NHL did it and ESPN did it on their station. And it was just, for me, it was not a very good start for ESPN having the rights to the NHL. And like I said, I know that it's probably going to make the NHL more money. I know that it's probably better for the NHL. I just liked it a little bit more when the NHL was on a station that it was the number one thing on that station. For ESPN, it's going to get beat out by the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, the MLS, most likely. Like, it's going to be the 5th, maybe even 6th thing that ESPN talks about and that gets attention for ESPN. So again, I just was not a huge fan of the little bit that I did watch of the expansion draft. And now that we're speaking, of course, about the expansion draft, we're going to jump in and talk about what the Buffalo Sabres lost. And a lot of fans feared that when Will Borgen was not protected by the Buffalo Sabres, instead it was Rasmus Ristolainen, that Will Borgen would be taken by the Seattle Kraken. And of course, the Buffalo Sabres fans' worst fear was realized when they did go ahead and take the young defenseman in Will Borgen from the Buffalo Sabres, 24 years old with the Buffalo Sabres. He was a 4th-round draft pick, number 92 overall in 2015. He is 6'3", 205 pounds, big defensive defenseman. Who played 140 games for the Rochester Americans in the AHL and scored 25 points, 4 goals, and 21 assists. He also had a plus-minus of plus 14 in the NHL. Or AHL, I'm sorry. He played 14 games in the NHL for the Buffalo Sabres. He had 4 penalty minutes and was a -9 for the Buffalo Sabres in those 14 games. Now, I know plus-minus is not a very tremendous stat for anybody in the NHL. However, a -9 in just 14 games is something that is kind of an eye-popping stat, if you ask me, for a defensive defenseman. Now, a lot of people were really, really upset that they didn't protect Will Borgen as they drafted him in 2015, and they cultivated him, and they developed him, and he finally looked like he was going to get a shot in the NHL last season for the worst team, of course. And, of course, he gets hurt 10 games into the season, and his season's over, and thus ending his time essentially with the Buffalo Sabres as he is exposed in the expansion draft, and he gets picked by the Seattle Kraken. Now, like I said, a lot of people were really upset when they found out that Borgen was going to be exposed in the expansion draft. However, I was not one of those people. And here's why. The reason why I was not terribly upset about the fact that Will Borgen was named or was one of the names that was unprotected for the Buffalo Sabres was that the fact that Rasmus Ristolainen, at least around the league, seemingly has more trade value still than a guy who's only played 14 games in the NHL and is going to turn 25 this season. Now, Ristolainen, like I said, has more trade value than Will Borgen, and that's going to propel us into the next topic and the last topic that I wanted to talk about, which is real quick. I wanted to talk about the Buffalo Sabres making a trade for Rasmus Ristolainen. This is something that has been talked about for years, essentially. Ristolainen has actually asked to be traded at one point, and the Buffalo Sabres seemingly just kept him around and kept him around and kept him around. For what reason, I'm not sure. However, this offseason seems like the time that Ristolainen is finally going to get traded, as he is a pending UFA after this next season. Now, it is being reported that the asking price for Ristolainen is a first-round draft pick and a prospect. And while that seems very high, it is being reported that there are several teams kicking the tires or asking about a potential trade with the Buffalo Sabres for Ristolainen's services. Those teams would include Montreal and Winnipeg. Now, there's another team that I believe that might jump in on the Ristolainen sweepstakes, and that is the Edmonton Oilers. And why the Edmonton Oilers are going to jump in on this trade carousel, so to speak, is because they just lost Adam Larsson in the expansion draft. They thought that maybe they could negotiate a contract after the expansion draft, and that's not how it worked out, as Larsson ended up coming to terms with the Seattle Kraken for 4 years, $16 million, I believe. And then the Seattle Kraken obviously took Adam Larsson, right-handed defenseman from the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the teams that were interested in Rasmus Ristolainen, here's a couple of trade proposals that I've put together that I would be happy with, that the Buffalo Sabres got for Ristolainen. Now, a trade with Montreal, Buffalo would get the 2021 first-round pick. It would be 31st overall, I believe. And they would get a prospect, a young D prospect, a 2018 second-rounder, Alexander Romanoff. Now, Romanoff played 54 games with the Montreal Canadiens last season. He had 1 goal, 5 assists for 6 points. And Dober Prospects reported that he is a great skater with good offensive skills, and he plays a physical game. He's not the biggest guy. I think he's about 6 foot, 180 pounds, something in that nature. So he's not the biggest guy out there. However, he would replace the physicality that you would lose with Rasmus Ristolainen. He has a young kid at only 21 years old. I believe he turns 22 this next season. And he could potentially jump right into your lineup. And yes, I know he's a left-handed D. All the guys that I'm going to talk about are probably left-handed defensemen. He would replace something that you would lose, and that is immediate NHL presence for the Buffalo Sabres. Now, if the Sabres were not, or the Montreal Canadiens were not willing to trade Romanoff, another person that the Sabres could potentially target is defenseman Caden Gooley, who was the first-round draft pick, 16th overall in the 2020 draft. And in the WHL, played 64 games, had 11 goals, 29 assists for 40 points. Not bad. A seemingly very solid prospect. Another one for the Buffalo Sabres if Romanoff is off the table. Somebody the Sabres can go after also. Now, the next team that was said to be in on the Ristolainen trade front would be the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Winnipeg would give Buffalo their first-round pick, obviously. It would be 18th overall. And they would also give the Buffalo Sabres defenseman Dylan Samberg. He is a 2017 second-round pick, 43rd overall, played in 32 games, had 1 goal, 6 assists, and for 7 points and was a +4 in the AHL. He was a 21-year-old kid. He is a strong skating, two-way D-man with a bomb of a shot, as reported by Dober Prospects. Now, that is something that you can, you get a nice D prospect, you get a higher first-round draft pick, and then maybe you can package a little bit something else. You can move maybe even higher in the draft if there is somebody that strikes your fancy, that is going a little bit higher, or potentially use that draft pick to go out and get you another player for the Buffalo Sabres to put on their roster going into this season. And that is something that the Buffalo Sabres would need to seriously, in my opinion, look at, as they don't have a whole lot going into the next season. They still need a starting goaltender and a backup goaltender. So things to look forward to, or things to watch out for this offseason. And the last trade partner that might come in late is the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Edmonton Oilers, obviously, I just stated they lost right-handed defenseman Adam Larsson. They would trade Buffalo their first-round pick, 20th overall, and potentially defenseman Philip Broberg. He was the 8th overall pick in 2019. He had 3 goals, 10 assists for 13 points, and he was a -4 in the SHL. And he is a good two-way defenseman with size. He is 6'3", 200 pounds. He's an outstanding skater, good vision, great passing skills, and reads the play well defensively, and has a high hockey IQ. Those are things that would obviously soften the blow for a lot of fans on leaving Will Borgen exposed in this expansion draft. Now, the Ristolainen return is going to be paramount for a lot of Sabres fans in order to feel like they didn't get ripped off by leaving and exposing a younger defenseman in Will Borgen, who looked like he was going to potentially have a decent year with the Buffalo Sabres. A bigger guy, a more physical guy, a guy that is a more defensive defenseman at this level. And a lot of people were really upset. Honestly, I wasn't that upset that they left him out there. Again, I believe Ristolainen has more trade value. It is being reported that he has more trade value. And if if GM Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres can get a deal done in which they bring back a first-round draft pick and a prospect, it will be a very, very smart move going forward for the Buffalo Sabres. That is going to do it for this episode of Sports Talk Buffalo. Remember, guys, if you like what you're hearing, tell your friends and tell your family. Subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you guys never miss an episode of Sports Talk Buffalo. You never miss a video. There's going to be more videos than just this on this page. I'm really starting to get some other things together for you guys. I'm very excited to do them. They're not going to be an all-the-time thing. However, I'm going to have some special videos that will come out soon. If you're listening to me on audio only, you can hear me on any of the major podcasting websites, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and, of course, right there on Anchor. I encourage you guys, again, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Interact with me. Let me know what you think of any of the trades in the comment section below. I love interacting with you guys, and I try to answer every single comment that is left on every single video. Thanks again. Have a fantastic week.